Romain, welcome to Talk Satellite at World Satellite Business Week here in Paris.
Very nice to be here, Kevin. Thank you for having me.
So, as a company, how have you financed your business so far? And do you see any difference in the market for innovative companies like yours to establish their services?
Well, in the early years, it was really a mix between private investors' money and including ourselves, the co-founders, and public money, public subsidies. So we had some support from the Public Investment Bank in the beginning in France here, help from the Paris Île-de-France region, and then little by little we got some funding from the European Union. So in 2021, we got awarded an European Innovation Council funding of a bit more than 2 million. So that was really an important step for us at the time. And we also secured some projects with European Defence Fund. And this kind of got us into the defense world as well, on top of the commercial and civil domains. And we've also been working with the French Ministry of Defense in that regard. So yeah, this really took us over during the first 3 to 4 years. But pretty early on, we were also focused on customers. So we got our first customers pretty much at the same time as we got our first employees. So we're not the kind of ventures that really put everything in the R&D, in the product development, and then figured out how to address the market. We really addressed the market from D1. So yeah, and now we've raised a little bit more than 10 million of equity money last year, which gives us more perspective to develop the company, develop the network of sensors, because we have a global network of space surveillance sensors deployed all around the world, including in Australia, in Siding Springs. Yeah. It's always been tough to raise funds in the space sector for startups. I mean, because often you have to use hardware, which VC are not very prone to fund. You have to work with government, and VCs hate governments. In the early years, there was, like in 2020, there was a more favorable VC ecosystem, I would say, in terms of access to funding, but the culture was very, very off compared to what we were doing. Now I would say there's less money, but the culture is getting there, and VCs understand what we're doing better. They understand the interest of having our own hardware, our own infrastructure, and they understand that it's vital to work with governments to enhance the security of space operations. So conclusion is that it's still hard, but for different reasons.
The industry's worst nightmare are starting to become true. And as you say, space is becoming the new Wild West. How is a company, Aldoria, going to help address this issue?
We really got into this business in 2017 because we saw the problem of space debris. We saw that it was not addressed and that it was a fundamental issue, and that private players had to be part of the solution. We looked at different ways to address this issue, and the first one was space traffic management. Before going there and collect debris like some of our customers are doing, we had to understand the space situation better and anticipate potential collisions or accidents in space. Using public and private money, we deployed this network of sensors, and now we're able to help the community to understand the risks better. For example, we've been working with the CNES, the National Space Agency in France, for quite a few years. And now when there's a breakup event, they turn to us and ask us to deliver data. So that's what we've been doing on the Chinese rocket upper stage breakup about a month ago. Typically the things that we're doing already. And then in the future, of course, we want to be the main player in Europe. We're already, one of the most advanced companies in Europe, definitely in terms of providing space surveillance data and services. But we want to be, at the core of what Europe is capable of in terms of mapping outer space and anticipating risks and threats. And Europe itself is kind of international collaboration lab, right? It's always been the case because it's many countries that have different interests. They need to cooperate because you have this overarching structure, but it's a lot of case-by-case analysis. Yeah, we're working with the USST, which is one of the axis of the EU space program, and in that sense, we trying to shape this collaboration between national countries. So yeah, my background is technical, so I'm always happy to address technical questions. So basically, we need to have a very good coverage of orbits. So the primary factor is really orbital coverage, and then we need to find locations that have good weather conditions and far away from any source of light pollution. And of course, then once you've said that, you need to find a trustworthy partner locally, from which we have a rent and service agreement, and then we deploy the systems and operate completely remotely. So everything is automatized, controlled from remote. One of the key aspects of space surveillance is really the congestion of low Earth orbits, and especially near polar orbit satellites. And to be able to be very efficient and at seeing those objects, we deployed sites on rather high latitudes, north and south. This was part of the equation as well. So now we have a site in North America and Canada, actually, 2 stations in Chile, 1 in Australia, and 2 in Europe.
Do you feel that the government and international bodies are doing enough to place a workable framework in place?
To solve that issue of space debris and space traffic congestion, I would say no. We are facing difficult times right now at the geopolitical level. A few years ago, we've seen quite a bit of momentum in the direction of coordinating space traffic better. Now we see that the French space law has been postponed, EU space law has been postponed, delayed at least. In the US, we don't see a lot of momentum to improve the way space traffic is coordinated. So yeah, regulatory bodies, they could do more. It's definitely international because the orbital space is a shared resource between countries. So it has to be international, and therefore geopolitical tensions are making everything difficult. So that's very much understandable. But nevertheless, we have to gather more data, share more data, provide more transparency, because it's of everybody's interest to keep the orbital space safe and sound.
Which are the programs you are most looking forward to working on?
We've just announced 2 commercial contracts this week. One with a French company called Newspace, based in Toulouse. They're going to launch multiple small sats over the coming years, and we protect these satellites in regards to on-orbit collisions. So very much looking forward to working with them and integrating in their control center. And the other partner that we've just secured is Infinite Orbits, as well, a French-based company with an international team. This last contract with Infinite Orbit is actually in the framework of the French 2030 investment program, so I have to mention that we get some support from our government. This is a crazy mission because it's in-orbit servicing in GEO, so they're actually going to get close to a satellite, take some pictures, potentially at some point dock as well. So very exciting mission. So on top of the standard collision avoidance service, we're also going to provide them with dedicated service in this critical phase of the close-ups and potential docking.
Worst and best scenario for the future of space?
The worst case scenario is that we cannot use space anymore. This is part of the range of possible futures. We have to realize that this is possible. This might even be likely. We have to be very careful in the way we operate systems, in the way we deliver launch licenses. Of course, coordinates the traffic. I like to say that low Earth orbit is really part of our environment. We're in Paris here. People from all over the world came to Paris. They travel thousands of kilometers, sometimes tens of thousands of kilometers, and the low Earth orbit is only 300 kilometers away. So it's basically going from here to Dijon, which is basically the city next door to here. So low Earth orbit is very close. We have to take care of it because otherwise it's just going to be impossible to use it anymore. And this is, of course, would be terrible for the entire space sector. We have a whole assembly here this week. The entire ecosystem, the entire industry is here. This won't exist if we're not able to use space responsibly. Best case scenario, last week there was the space walk as part of the Polaris Dawn mission. We live in very exciting times. We want to see more science, we want to see more tourism. Why not responsible tourism in Earth orbit and beyond? Why not colonizing other planets? Space is our gateway to the rest of the universe. The universe of possibilities is infinite in terms of preserving the orbital environment. The Earth orbital environment is really special. It's really a very tiny region. It's part of our environment, and there needs to be some level of transparency, cooperation. Even though people are fighting on the ground, if you have some good usable data to avoid a collision, to avoid a disaster in space, you've got to use it. You've got to collaborate. As someone told me last week actually whether or not there's a centralized body that tells you what to do or not. And most likely there's not going to be a centralized body that's going to tell you what to do, because I don't think there's anybody that can tell China and the US what to do at the same time. There's got to be a hunk. People have to have a hunk, because no operator wants their satellite to collide, right? So whether you're Chinese or American or European or whatever, or Indian, you don't want to hit another satellite. So you just got to let the other operator know. The political tension doesn't matter. It's just you got to be able to communicate with your fellow operator to avoid a disaster. Bringing the information up there and being able to transmit this information is key and critical to preserve our gateway.
How about access to space with the launch companies themselves?
We see that SpaceX now has almost a monopoly in the launch service field. Ariane 6 has done a successful launch about 2 months ago now. There's going to be 1 or 2 extra launches this year, so that's great. We're providing services to launch service companies to help them secure the trajectories, to make sure that when they launch a vehicle, it's not going to hit debris or another satellite straight away. Yeah, they're a very important piece of the system, of course.
Romain, thank you very much. We wish you every success.
Thank you very much for having me.